16th, 2018. A couple of housekeeping items for those that have not had the pleasure of joining us before. If you could silence your cell phones, we'd greatly appreciate that. Also, after we call the roll, we approve the minutes from the last meeting. And the way things work then is the city staff will present on an individual item. Initially, it's open just to the commission for technical questions. After the technical questions are over, we open it up for public commentary. If you have a question or a comment or something to say, please step up to the microphone over there and state your name and address so we have it for the minutes. Once everybody who has desired to speak has had that opportunity, we close public commentary, bring it back to the commission for discussion and usually a vote. With that, let us call the roll.
Kathleen Propp.
Here.
David Borsick.
Present.
Ed Bowen. Steve Cummings.
Here.
Michael Ford. John Hintz.
Here.
John Kiefer.
Here.
Robert Bygart.
Here.
Thomas Perry.
Here.
Andrew Mott.
Here.
Thomas Voitek.
Here.
Moving on to approval of the minutes from the October 2nd meeting. Are there any additions, corrections, deletions, et cetera for those minutes?
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that motion clearly passes. Let us move on to item number 1. Accept storm sewer easement at 1925 Shelter Court.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome, sir.
So the subject site is the Oshkosh Area Humane Society property located west of Bowen Street. The city is requesting a 30-foot wide easement along the west property line, and that is for an existing storm sewer pipe that was installed in 1994. And this request is meant to be to kind of clean up an oversight. A council resolution from 1988 passed the acceptance of storm sewer easements for a number of properties adjacent to the railroad for storm sewer. And those properties did have recorded easements. However, this one did not have a recorded storm sewer easement. So this request is meant to provide that storm sewer easement to give the city access to the easement for any repairs or replacement of the storm sewer. And here's a easement document that shows that 30-foot wide storm sewer easement running north to south from West Murdoch. And staff recommends approval of the acceptance of the proposed storm sewer easement at 1925 Shelter Court as requested.
All right, any technical question? Okay, anyone here from the public to speak to this item today? Seeing none, back to the commission.
Motion approved. Second.
Call the roll, please.
Steve Cummings.
Aye.
Hintz.
Aye.
Kiefer.
Aye.
Bygart.
Aye.
Perry.
Aye.
Mott.
Aye.
Propp.
Aye.
Borsick.
Aye.
Voitek.
Aye.
Motion carried 9-0.
All right, item number 2, residential design standards variance to allow for the closure of window openings on the front facade at 1723 Algoma Boulevard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this item is a design standards variance for a residential property. You can see here in blue the subject site. I'm just trying to think here. Yeah, this is the right mouse. So a lot of the zoning, so the subject site here is zoned SR3, so single family residential 3. A little bit lower density residential. Most of the immediate properties around it are zoned similarly. I believe this parcel over here is SR9, but for the most part residential, a little bit of mixed use and commercial. Varying architectural characters to the properties, but similar scale. A number of them are 2-story. This property is a single-story ranch property. You'll see some images in a minute. Here's an aerial showing the subject site a little bit better in blue there. You can see it's a little bit bigger lot than some of the immediate ones around it. Here is a Google Street View of the subject property. It is as I mentioned, a ranch property built in 1955. It's a little bit hard to see, not ideal with the tree in the way here, but you can see how they have some varied materials on the facade, some pushing and pulling of facade planes here. But what we'll focus on is this breezeway here in question between the garage here and the rest of the house. Here's some context. So this is a commercial building. I forget who the tenant is in there or who the owner is, but that's across the street just to the east, I believe. This is just to the north of the subject property. So these properties, it's a little hard to see this one, but you can see the 2-story And then this is just to the south on Algoma there. None of these, it is important to note, none of these have breezeways the way the subject property does. So, as I mentioned, focus in on this area. So the variance is for closing off some window openings here. I'll explain the applicable ordinance section in a minute, but basically they want to close off some of these windows here. And this is a drawing that the applicant did for us. So they put a lot of work into this. They also included some existing photographs, which you'll see in a second. But this gives you a sense of what they're looking to do. They would like to take this and I believe turn it into a mudroom. So right now it's kind of a breezeway. I don't believe it's conditioned. I don't believe it is, although we could confirm with them. I might be incorrect on that. There's a lot of glazing here, a lot of panels that are no longer made in terms of they're both operable and they are rather large. The frames are in deteriorated states, excuse me, and so they want to replace those. And what they would do is they'd maintain a door opening here, basically a service door here with a half light, and then they would install a non-operable 24-inch by 48-inch light here. And then they would clad this in vinyl siding, similar to that on other areas of the front facade. So they wouldn't have a patchwork appearance there. You can see some of the existing photographs. So they did a really good job of documenting what they have for us, so it made our job a lot easier. You can see these, I believe they are operable, almost open and close, I believe like blinds in a way. But these panels here that they'd be getting rid of, essentially. And then this door, and you can tell how this is exposed here, so I imagine there's a lot of heat loss during the winter. And then some of the deteriorated state there of the trim, paint peeling, maybe some wood rotting. So that was one of the main reasons why they wanted to close this off with new materials. Some more images showing a little bit closer up of, for example, this trim, some water infiltration, some rotting there. Screen not in the best shape, and then some of that operable light on the door there. This just shows kind of similar or earlier, but same image blown up here. So the window that they'd be looking to put in, the door, so a 36-inch by 80-inch door, and then vinyl siding that they'd be putting on there. Similar lap size and appearance as the rest of the siding. The applicable code reference, so the issue is that code currently prohibits closing of windows on front facades. States pretty explicitly that existing window openings shall not be closed or filled totally or partially. So they're basically requesting a variance from this code provision to do what they need to do or what they want to do. We as staff did not see an issue with what they're looking to do. We did not think it would be contrary to the public interest or have a very negative impact on the architectural integrity of the house. So we recommend approval of the variance. The conditions that we attached would be that siding installed by the applicant would match or be substantially similar in appearance to the existing siding on the home. The front door would remain on that facade plane, but it would shift. The relocation would be permitted, but remain on the facade plane. You know, it helps break it up, either that or some kind of glazing in addition to the window that they're proposing. The third condition would be similar to what we've put on before. So any potential future window closures on the front facade would come to the Plan Commission. They'd be filed as separate requests. This variance would be pretty narrow in scope, only for the work that they're proposing. And with that, we recommend approval, and that's what we have on that one.
All right, thank you, sir. Technical questions? Is this original to the house, this little causeway?
I believe so. Maybe the applicants might know. I believe it is.
Other technical questions? All right, seeing none, anyone here from the public to speak to this item today? Okay. Seeing none, back to the commission.
Motion to approve. Second.
Discussion on the motion? Go ahead, John.
I just want to say one thing, because I have a back porch that has these jealousy windows all over the back of it. the most energy inefficient things ever devised by man. And if we have an
It's
opportunity.
like having no window at all.
It is. because I actually had to get the interior screens that we had for them. I ended up getting plexiglass made so we could put plexiglass in the wintertime. So
Did you
at
get
least-
permits for that, John?
Because that's on the inside.
No, because I was just replacing the screen.
I know, I'm just kidding.
But as far as the city goes, if we see windows like this and people come to us, by all means, we should be encouraging people to get rid of these because they hold back no cold, no heat. They're just terrible all year round.
Kathy, and then Steve.
Well, I don't view this as a standard window. Talking about closing a window, this is, as you say,
Yeah.
kind of
Give her-
a porch-like thing.
Those jealous.
Breeze.
Yeah.
A breezeway doesn't count, as far as I'm concerned, so this is going to be an excellent thing to do, and I'm happy to support it.
Steve?
They're also a pain to clean. They were designed by the devil.
Yes.
I buy the double. All right.
Awful.
Get that in there.
Actually, I think it was the devil's maker. They're evil.
On the note of the devil, let's call the roll.
All right, Cummings,
Aye.
Hinn,
Aye.
Kiefer,
Aye.
Weigart,
Aye.
Perry,
Aye.
Mott,
Aye.
Crop,
Aye?
Borsick,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 9-0.
Item number 3, commercial design standards variance to allow a renovation using Class 4 materials to clad portions of the existing building at 804 Witzel Avenue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this one's a little bit different. A commercial situation here. So this one is an auto body service facility here, and I believe it's owned by Auto Authority LLC. You can see the subject site here. So it's kind of in a mixed area. There's a lot of UMU, so urban mixed use, institutional properties too here, down to the southeast here. Some urban industrial, so the subject site is zoned urban industrial, and then the property to the west is. And then there's some other miscellaneous industrial properties to the west and the north. Go to an aerial of the site here. So you can see a lot of parking on the site and a lot of surface parking, and then the building in question here. We'll see some images in a minute. This is the Oshkosh Humane Society to the north. The Oshkosh Parks and Forestry Division is to the south. There's a veterinary clinic here to the south. I believe this is Verve to the east. And then there are a few other properties to the west here. Weld is over here to the west. Here's some context. And this will be kind of important for part of the petitioner's argument, because part of what they base their argument on is the cladding of a lot of the surrounding buildings. Now you can see it's kind of varied, but there are a lot of metal cladding systems used. The Weld Wire and Manufacturing Company here, you can see some vertical seam panels there. This car wash here to the west, I believe, is also partially clad in vertical seam panels. Verve is the one building primarily a brick. And then you can see our Parks and Forestry Division here, that building is also clad in metal there. This is the subject building here. Right now it's a cinder block building, built back in 1963, so it substantially predates our ordinance. The block is currently considered a Class 4 material under code, so it wouldn't be permitted for commercial buildings today. Though this one is non-conforming, it predates the ordinance, so as you can see, it's mostly clad in block. There is a little bit of glazing on the front, but what they want to do is they want to cover a lot of that with new materials. They would use, as you can see here, 3 main materials. So this grand rib vertical seam siding here, metal panel here, James Hardy horizontal fiber cement system here on the front mass of the building, as you can see there. And then some stone for part of the front mass of the building there, helping to break it up. They put a lot of emphasis on that front mass there, trying to make that more attractive to the street, or from the street, I should say. And then primary cladding for the building would be this vertical panel system here. They cited the fact that these are both, they're high-end, they have UL impact resistance, So hail resistance, fire resistance, they're UL rated for those resistance tests, and they should last for a long time. They also have a paint that is installed, I believe, at the factory, and so they are supposed to be pretty durable. Also, the fact that these are widely used, these systems are widely used on a lot of the surrounding context. Here's a rendering, kind of cuts off some of the front of the mass here, but you get a sense of what they're looking at doing here in color. So you can see back here and then up here, some of the primary cladding for the rear of the building would be that grand rib vertical seam siding there. And then the stone that would carry around this service door here, this garage door, I should say. And then the James Hardy fiber cement used here. And they'd maintain the door and window openings, as you can see there. Here is the primary cladding that I mentioned, this grand rib panel here. Kind of explains what it is. You can see the seam profiles here. And then here are some of the color samples there that the manufacturer provides on their website. Another image of it kind of just shows some of the nail and screw patterns. I believe it is an exposed fastener, but I don't know that we have anything in our code prohibiting that for commercial buildings. Typically, these materials are just prohibited because they're class 4. Here's a before and after. Thought it'd be helpful to compare the existing state of the building. You can see the CMU construction with the window openings here, and then what they're proposing. We as staff felt that what they're proposing is a substantial improvement on what they had, primarily, or especially for this front mass here. And that's part of why we recommend approval of this variance. The code reference that's applicable here, just for anybody watching and for the Plan Commission, Section 30-243C states that commercial buildings shall, 1, be predominantly clad in Class 1 materials. So Class 2 and Class 3 materials may be used as accents and trim not to exceed 50% of the total building facade area. Class 4 materials are prohibited by code. So they require a variance to do what they want to do. We recommend approval of this variance, 1, because we feel that they are substantially improving the appearance of the building compared to what it is now. And then 2, because a lot of the context does use these vertical panels. So we felt that it would tie in with some of the existing context. We did put some conditions on this. So 1 would be that the owner would ensure that the cladding is maintained throughout its lifespan. So not allowing it to rust out, making sure that it's maintained and that it's kept up. 2, similar to the residential one that we had before, any future intentions to renovate using Class 4 materials would be filed as separate requests and come through the Plan Commission for review. The variance would only be for the work proposed and mentioned here. Again, tying in to kind of the same thing as before, just further emphasizing it. I guess it does use some of the same language, so we maybe didn't have to have all that in there. But any future work such as this would be filed as separate requests, emphasizing the narrow nature of the variance. And then 4 would be the petitioner shall add some features to break up the side facades. So let's go back really quick. Just want to show you what we're talking about here. This here, and then this. So some kind of features to break this up. I know they kind of terminate the stone here. It'd be nice if they added some kind of articulation, some kind of material variation or something. And we, as community development staff, would review that. So that would be our 4th condition on this. And our finding was that the variance would not be contrary to the public interest based on the fact that other buildings there use these materials. It wouldn't stick out like a sore thumb, at least in our opinion.
Thank you, sir. Technical questions, David.
The rendering shows, doesn't show the landscaping. Will the landscaping and signage remain the same, or how is that? Will that be addressed?
I believe that would remain the same. I don't believe they address that in their application, so I would assume they would not be removing any landscaping.
They would be required, if they need to remove that landscaping in order to complete the renovation, it would have to be landscaped back to code.
Yep.
As part of the application. In terms of signage, they have not indicated any signage, so any signage that would take place on the building would have to meet base code for that district.
Yep.
So the post-construction, the landscaping would be at least as intense as what they.
At least as
Yes.
what they have. I said if they needed to remove it, they would have to landscape it back to code.
Thank you.
Other technical questions? Just, I don't know if it's the appropriate time for it, but we have a lot of buildings in the city kind of like that probably don't meet the current, but yet by doing something that's technically not allowed, they're still improving. I mean, does this kind of fit into that category? They're still improving the look of a building even though it doesn't.
A lot of
It's almost like we need a category for those kinds of buildings.
Yeah.
I
A
think
lot
there's
of what
plenty of them
staff
in town.
looked at in this application was just that. They're going from a class 4 material to a class 4 material, so you were not really having a negative impact in that aspect. And then on top of that, we're vastly improving our front facade.
Right.
Seemed like a logical decision to support that because we are bettering that as a whole.
Got it.
Yep.
All right. Anybody here from the public to speak to this item today? Come on up, sir.
Good afternoon, Dennis Reedinger, 1434 Hazel. I just wanted to make myself available. I'm with the proposed general contracting firm for the project to see if anyone had any questions.
Did you have any issues with the conditions that were, the city staff placed on this?
We do not, no. I can't tell you that we've had initial talks about the signage. Kind of waiting, considering not necessarily a complete rebranding, but this would be an impetus for further discussions on the branding. So I would assume that there's gonna be a new sign as well.
Questions from the commission? Jeff?
Yeah, and you don't have a problem with breaking up those long side facades with something architecturally?
We do not, no.
Okay, good, thank you.
It's not nearly as visible as it appears from the photos, and is quite a bit longer than it appears. One other thing, I think that the photo is a good representation, but the masonry is in a little bit more decay than what you see in the photo. Definitely want to make an improvement and are trying to do the right thing for the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you.
Other thoughts or comments for him? Thank you, sir. Anyone else here to speak to this item today? All right, seeing none, back to the commission.
Motion approved.
Second.
Discussion, Kathy?
Well, I just want to say that the Parks Department across the street is an architectural embarrassment. This is only going to be better.
Maybe it'll be an
I wish
impetus,
that the
impetus
Parks
for
Department.
further improvement in the
Yes,
area.
exactly.
What do you really?
I wish the Parks Department had been able to go into the Public Works building, but that says nothing about their good work, so.
John?
Just want to say that this is, what, the second cinder block building on Murdoch that we've dealt with in, what, the last 4 months?
This is Witzel.
This is not.
Or
Murdoch.
this Witzel? Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
Murdoch.
Well, it's, yeah,
Yeah.
but similar type areas where it's kind of that iffy, you know, area and everything. It's kind of nice that we're seeing people coming in with these type of buildings and actually improving them.
Right.
Hopefully, they're seeing that the city's working with them. If any of, then the word spreads around because those cinder block buildings are very ugly.
Anything else before we vote? All right, call the roll, please.
Cummings,
Aye.
Hintz,
Aye.
Kiefer,
Aye.
Weigert,
Aye.
Perry,
Aye.
Mott,
Aye.
Crop,
Aye.
Forsick,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 9-0.
Moving on to item number 4, specific implementation plan amendment for fencing addition at 1130 North Westfield Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the subject site is the Evergreen Retirement Community. It's located south of Oshkosh Avenue. It has frontage on the west side of North Eagle Street and east side of North Westfield Street. The site is zoned institutional with a planned development overlay. The surrounding area is mostly residential uses with some commercial to the north and a park to the south. So here's an aerial view of the subject site. And the area in question is a parking area along Eagle Street. Here's a closer view. So there's an existing stretch of 6-foot-tall solid wood fencing along this parking area on the north side of it. The petitioner is requesting to extend that fencing further east towards Eagle Street. And so here's a site plan. So it shows the existing fencing shown here. And they're proposing to extend it 15 feet further along that parking lot. And that will extend into the front yard area. And the intent of this fencing is to kind of shield the view of that parking lot from the areas to the north. Because the fencing will be 6 feet tall and solid, it will need a base standard modification because in front yard areas, the maximum height is 6 feet and maximum opacity is 50%. And so here is what the fencing will look like, 6 foot tall, solid cedar shadow block fencing. So it extends from the existing fencing, will match with it. And again, that goes into the front yard and has about a 22-foot distance from the front property line and sidewalk. Staff is recommending that they either install or maintain existing landscaping on the north side of that fencing extension to kind of break up that solid fencing in the front yard. So we'd like to see a landscape plan that shows either existing landscaping or additional landscaping to break up that fencing. And staff recommends approval of the SIP amendment with the following conditions: a base standard modification to allow 6 foot tall solid fencing in the front yard, and landscaping be installed or maintained on the north side of the fencing per Department of Community Development approval.
Thank you, sir. Technical questions, anyone? Okay, seeing none, anyone here from the public to speak to this item today? Come on up, ma'am.
Hi, good afternoon. Teresa Brockman. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Business Development at Evergreen. Just wanted to be here in case anyone had any questions for us.
Do you have any questions for Evergreen? It appears we do not. Thank you. Anyone else here to speak to this item today? All right, seeing none, back to the commission.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, call the roll, Nina.
Cummings,
Aye.
Hints,
Aye.
Kiefer,
Aye.
Weigert,
Aye.
Harry,
Aye.
Mott,
Aye.
Crop,
Aye.
Orsick,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 9-0.
Moving on to the final business item of the meeting, number 5, conditional use permit and specific implementation plan for a multifamily development located at the northwest corner of West 6th Avenue and Oregon Street, commonly referred to as the Morgan District.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So here we have the subject area. It is the old Morgan Door site. This is the Morgan District. We had the conditional use permit to allow apartments along with a GDP go forward earlier this year. They're now preparing to move forward with the first phase of that development. In order to do so, they need to come back for a couple of items. So we do have residential district to the south and west, obviously the river to the north. East end of the site, we are not dealing with that this time. They're holding that for commercial development, as long as the very kind of northwest corner of the site that's being held for future development as well. So here we have the aerial of the site. You can see it has largely been cleared at this point. Here was the overall concept plan that took place during the general development plan. Indicated 4 5-story, 54-unit apartment buildings, a clubhouse with pool, and then approximately 6 townhome buildings for future phase. They're now moving forward with phase 1, which includes the 3 western apartment buildings. Again, they're 60 feet in height, 54 units each, and the clubhouse. In conjunction with that, they would be doing the surface parking areas and the 2 private access drives. Now, this site is a little bit unique that it carries a riverfront mixed-use zoning district with a plan development overlay and a riverfront overlay. So this is one of the few areas in the city where we actually have 2 overlay districts. That riverfront overlay district has an additional set of design guidelines that are placed on it. In order to accommodate any new building in the riverfront overlay district, you must also get a conditional use permit. So today's conditional use permit is different than the one we previously had. The previous one was to allow apartments as a standalone use. This conditional use permit is to fulfill the requirements of the riverfront overlay district. That is design requirements that go along with that, and we'll touch base on what those are as we go forward. Then in conjunction with that, they are seeking this specific implementation plan for the first phase. So here are some renderings of the building. Just a couple of things to actually touch on the site plan there. Still looking at the 2 access points. The first one off the western edge is the kind of the corner of 5th and Iowa, where a private drive would enter the site. Second access point is off of 6th. Now this access drive has been narrowed up to meet the same size requirement is Nebraska Street to the south. If you remember during the general development plan, one of the concerns was that was wider. Department of Public Works as well as planning staff were concerned a little bit with some conflict of a larger driveway than the street to the south. So the applicant has narrowed it up to match what a traditional street width would be, even though this will be a driveway. It'll be constructed as a driveway and not a street. So they have fulfilled that requirement of their previous general development plan. Excuse me, go back one more time. Applicant is proposing to build 290 parking spaces. That includes 93 interior covered spaces within the 3 apartment buildings and 197 surface parking spaces. Code would require a total of 324 based on the 162 units. So a base standard modification will be required for parking. Now the applicant is proposing approximately 1.15 parking spaces per bedroom or 1.62 parking spaces per code. Code would require 2 for 0 to 2 bedroom units. Now the applicant is only doing basically efficiency units through 2 bedroom units. There are no 3 bedroom units as part of this project. At this point, they've removed all of those 3 bedroom units. Staff looked at the kind of the urban environment, the location of this project, as well as some data that was provided by the applicant for other similar projects they have built. And staff is in support of the base standard modification, the 1.62 spaces per unit based on kind of their unit mix, the urban environment that they're in, and some of the additional amenities they're providing should be sufficient for this use. Similar developments have been built with as low as 0.72 parking spaces per unit and do not have appeared to have any negative impact. In conjunction with that, they're also requesting a base standard modification for bicycle parking. Code has a very broad requirement of 16 exterior parking spaces for bikes. The applicant is asking to reduce that to 8. However, they're also providing 90 indoor parking spaces for bikes. Essentially, each one of the parking spaces inside of the building is a parking space for both a vehicle and then as a hanging bike rack for that unit. So they're vastly exceeding the amount of bike parking we ask for. They're just asking to provide it inside the building within kind of 8 overflow bicycle parking spaces to be located near the clubhouse. Staff feels that is, they're meeting the intent of the ordinance by having that bicycle parking available. And further, we feel that actually helps justify their request for less vehicle parking. They're intending this to be in the urban environment and really encourage more of that pedestrian bicycle traffic over just vehicle traffic. So staff does support that request. The Riverfront Mixed-Use District has a maximum waterfront setback of 45 feet. The applicant is requesting a base standard modification from that. Now, it's 45 feet from the ordinary high water mark. On this plan, find my mouse. The ordinary high water mark kind of meanders in and out through here. Based on their site plan, some of the environmental aspects with floodplain, some wetlands, as well as kind of meandering of the river, the applicant is seeking to change that to 47 feet for this western unit, 133 feet for the middle unit, and 105 feet for the eastern unit. Staff does support that request. This is a similar development plan as we saw during the general development plan. A lot of other units of this type being built throughout not just Oshkosh but the greater Fox Valley have been using this development pattern where they're maximizing the window views for every unit as opposed to one parallel building. Also looking at some of those site constraints with where floodplain and wetland do exist on the property, there is a little bit of impact that really is pushing some of the buildings farther away from the riverfront. So we do support that. We do not feel it would have any type of detrimental effect with this building orientation. Last, for base standard modifications from the site plan, the applicant is requesting a base standard modification for the fence. They're fencing around this pool. Because it is considered a front yard in a waterfront district, they would be limited to 4 feet. Applicant would like to increase that to 6 feet in overall height. Staff feels it is an acceptable request. With it being a pool, you're going to want a little bit more security. Now, they have not finalized exactly what that fence is going to look like, so staff is recommending that a condition be placed on this, that the final design and material of the fence be reviewed and approved by staff. Just want to make sure it's something decent, matches the area. But we do feel with it being a pool, 6 feet is an appropriate height for that fence. Stormwater management plans have been submitted, are being reviewed. The applicant is still working with Department of Public Works on a lot of the utility and stormwater for this area. There is a little bit of unique stuff going on here with stormwater outfall for the city going through the property. There is some unique sewer and water taking place here to accommodate these units. They're using a kind of a private system that will be publicly, I'll ask Steve to make sure I don't say this wrong. Because this is a private street and these units don't have their own individual frontage, there's going to be a private main that goes through this property, but it will then be actually should be a public main and private property. So it's a little bit unique, but it will help this development to move forward. In terms of landscaping, a couple of items to note here. They're required 1,694 building foundation landscaping points. Applicant is looking at doing about 1,735, so they do exceed that. They also meet all location requirements for being within 10 feet of the building, 50% along the primary building facade. So they meet all requirements for foundation landscaping. Paved area landscaping is 50 points per 10 parking spaces. They do meet their overall number of landscaping points for paved area. However, they are deficient in the interior islands. Code does not permit you to have more than 20 parking spaces in a line without an interior island. So they are missing kind of 2 islands here and 2 islands here. So they will need to make that change. They're going to lose approximately 4 parking spaces when they add those required islands, but relatively minor change. Staff is conditioning the approval of this, that they make that change to add those required islands. Street frontage landscaping, they're actually deficient in their street frontage landscaping. They treated what will be the extension of the private drive running off West 5th as a front yard and landscaped that very nicely. However, they did not do any landscaping along Iowa or 6th Avenue. They need approximately 440 points of street frontage landscaping along West 6th and 180 points along along Iowa Street. Staff is recommending that they be required to install those landscaping permits per code. But on the plus side, they do add 720 landscaping points along the extension of what 5th will be as a private drive. So they are intending to landscape it very nicely. We don't know if they just missed that, but they are going to, I talked to the applicants, they're more than happy to add those landscaping points. Signage, no sign plans have been provided at this time. The applicant initially requested a base standard modification to be allowed to do 2 signs along Oregon Street. Staff is not recommending we support that base standard variance at this time, as no plans have been provided for that. Staff was not comfortable recommending approval of a number of sign increase without having an idea of what those signs may look like. So we talked to the applicant, they were okay with that. Staff would like to put in a condition that either a master sign plan be brought forward at a later date and approved by this body, or they meet the underlying RMU standards for signage, which would be 1 signage per street, and meet the applicable 1 square foot per building, per linear foot of building for their wall signage. Applicant seems like they're perfectly happy. Either if they want a larger sign plan or a little bit different, unique site plan for this, they'll come back. Otherwise, they'll meet the base code. Site lighting. So there is one deficiency in their site lighting plan. This intersection right here falls below our 0.4 requirement. We require 0.4 candlelight for access drive areas. They fall just under it as they near that intersection, so they will need to make some slight modifications to their lighting plan. Staff's just recommending that we place a condition on that they need to revise that to meet the minimum code requirements. All right, building facades. So this is where the Riverfront Overlay District kicks in. It requires 70% Class 1 materials for buildings, as well as 15% windows on both the first floor and a minimum of 50% glazing on all floors above that. So staff did review the materials provided as well as the glazing requirements for both the RFO district as well as the base standards we have for our design requirements, and they do meet all of those requirements from a material standpoint. They are, however, asking for a base standard modification for the balconies. Within the RFO district, we have a requirement that all balconies be a minimum of 6 feet in depth. Now, the intent of that section of the ordinance was to make sure that no one put up, 3 foot wide balconies by 4 foot wide balconies. We want to make sure you had a usable balcony space. They're requesting a base standard modification to go from the 6 feet required down to 4 and 5 feet, depending upon the location. But they're going with much wider balconies than we are traditionally found on these units. So staff is comfortable issuing that base standard modification because they're meeting the intent, which really was to make sure you had a functional, usable balcony. And some of theirs are as wide as 14 feet, so they may only be 5 feet deep, but they're 14 feet wide. They give you that functional, usable space. No elevations have been provided for the clubhouse at this time, so staff is recommending we place a condition that Community Development Department approve the final clubhouse elevations as long as they are consistent in material and look with these buildings. If the applicant would choose a different design that did not match these buildings, we would require them to come back to Plan Commission and Council for that approval. So here's kind of some renderings of the project. As part of the RFO district requirements, they are required to provide some current site photos. So you can see it's a largely empty site. They do have some gravel out on the site as getting ready for the development to begin. So staff is recommending approval of both the conditional use permit and a specific implementation plan with a number of conditions. The first would be a base standard modification to increase the maximum allowed waterfront setback to 105, 103, and 74 feet respectively. Base standard reduce the number of required parking spaces from 324 to 290 as indicated on the plan. Base standard to reduce the number of required exterior parking spaces from 16 to 8. The master sign plan be submitted or is approved as a separate plan development unless it meets the underlying RMU requirements. That they revise the lighting plan to meet the 0.4 candlelight requirement. Base standard to allow the 6-foot fence with Community Development Department having the final design approval. Base standard to reduce the 6-foot deep balconies to allow 4 to 5-foot balconies. Revise the landscaping plan to add the required street frontage plantings. Include the interior and landscape islands as required. And that the final building elevations for the clubhouse be approved by Department of Community Development, or if the elevations are substantially different, they come back to this body.
Thank you, sir. Technical questions, start with David.
Could you just do the aerial, as-is aerial?
Yep. There you go.
Because that only a portion of the property is going to be developed, and certainly the remainder undeveloped, is largely a parking lot, ungraveled, or is there any consideration that be the remaining undeveloped property be grassed in?
It is not something staff felt was appropriate at this time, but it definitely could be part of the discussion.
Other technical questions? Okay, seeing none, anywhere here from the public to speak to this item today? Now's your chance. Come on, Grant.
Hey guys.
Hey.
Ed Bowen, 601 Oregon Street, Oshkosh. Here to obviously answer any questions and kind of give you guys an update on where we are in the process, share some of our more up-to-date renderings, some of the progress that we've made since the last time we were in front of you. And just share some more specifics as part of our specific implementation plan. So again, you guys were familiar with the footprint, the rationale for sort of the perpendicular orientation to the river, and why we were doing some of that to maximize as much accessibility to the river as we possibly could. We have been tweaking in the last month or two a number of items, including some of the exteriors. The initial plans that we had brought in with us had a significant amount more metal on it. It was a little bit more brake metal and metal paneling and things like that. We, in order to achieve the 70% Class 1 material threshold, we replaced a lot of that with brick, which I think is I think it mirrors some of the existing neighborhood a little bit better. We've got some of the samples down here. We've got some of the bricks here. This is a little bit more of a wood look paneling, and then some of the other materials to give you an idea of what we're looking at. We also had bumped up the amount of glass that we have surrounding it. And I brought in, just in case anyone was interested, I brought in some floor plans that you can kind of take a look at. So we obviously have a glass requirement on the building of, I think, is it
15%.
It's 15. Yeah. So we've obviously got that, and we meet that on all the floors. But I think beyond that, what we've done is we've tried to make sure that that's distributed, as evenly as it possibly can be within the units. Every unit that has a balcony obviously has patio doors. Every unit that doesn't, which is a relatively limited number, has a pretty good amount of glazing along that facade to increase that visibility to the river and all that sort of stuff. So the clubhouse, that we don't have the two-dimensional elevations for you. We do have a rendering of what we're working with currently. I think you see that it meshes pretty well with what we're proposing for the other buildings. Similar materials, similar styles. I don't anticipate us making any significant deviations from that overall design to what we're trying to do. So I guess if there's any questions, David, you had a question about grass, I think.
Yeah, maybe I can preface it.
Yeah.
What is the implementation plan, or do you have an of the build out of the balance of the property?
I wish. Because the balance of the property is what we are keeping our fingers crossed for significant commercial development, which is why we're using sort of the starting point that we are and going down that way. Obviously, the corner of Oregon and 6th is probably the most well-suited site for some sort of intensive commercial development. So that's kind of our, we have some interest. We have some folks that we're talking to on that portion of the site right now. That could start coming together here in the next couple of months. It could take a couple of years. We don't necessarily know. So I think the plan would be, you can kind of see where that fence line is now. We do have the bulk of that corner area down to the river that is grassed. So my suspicion is that once we do all of our earthwork on the rest of the site and things like that, we probably would wind up, anything that's east of that main entrance would probably wind up being grass as well, I suspect, unless we're into we're into doing the work on the commercial component of it.
Okay. And if we would go to the upriver side, which is intended to be or residential.
Yeah.
Any sense of the timeline there? If it
Right. I suspect that we're going to learn a lot about that timeline as we bring our first building online. I think that we're going to get a sense for what the demand is for the types of units that we see here. If you look at, I think the last page of those floor plans, I think has the 5th floor of our plans, which we've designed almost as more of a condo replacement project. They're significantly larger units. They have significantly higher finishes. They're designed a little bit more expansively. Therefore, we have fewer units on that floor. Those all have dens. They're just a little bit of a different product than what's available in the rental market right now. I think if we find that there's a good reception to those types of units, I think you'll see the balance of that site to the west, which we do have kind of slated. I don't want to say we have it committed or anything like that, but we've always envisioned more of a low density multifamily condo type product there. I think if we see those units moving and hitting the rents that we need to hit, I think we'll understand what our market is for condos. And at that point, that would be a parallel process to finishing the other parts of the building. So I know that doesn't give you a commitment as to like when we're going to do something, but I think it maybe gives you a better idea of what we're envisioning.
But if I understand part of the development plan, that to the 6th Street side, you're looking at a future date, some
Townhomes.
townhouses
Yep.
going in there.
Yep.
And that is the area I think I'm talking about is that, would you have any issue of grassing that?
I doubt it. No, I mean, we're going to be ripping up that area relatively aggressively anyway. The only thing to keep in mind here is that we do, and you know this as well as Peter probably does. So I'm going to not get into the environmental aspect of it, but we do have some cap requirements there that we need to maintain. There are a couple of hot spots through there that we need to ensure that we either asphalt or keep clay or whatever it is. So we do have some of those sensitive areas that we may have to be a little bit more careful about. But for the most part, I mean, we don't want our tenants' cars getting all dusty either. So I think grass would probably be the most likely solution to that problem.
Thank you.
And I think I think there's a code requirement, and I'll let maybe Steve can tell me after the fact or whatever, but I do think that we've got some obligations to keep it dust-free and everything anyway.
Other questions for Mr. Bowen?
And we do have our architect, Joseph Lee. Joe, I don't know if you want to highlight anything that we've got here, or if I've rambled.
I think you've covered it, but I can answer questions.
Yeah, if you have specific architectural questions, Joe's happy to touch on any.
Just a comment, I think this is extremely attractive. For what it's worth.
No, we like it too. I know it is a little bit more of a modern design than I think has been traditionally implemented in this area so far. But I do think that.
But it's not uncommon in other.
It's not, no, and I think Joe. One of the reasons that we selected Joe as our architect is visiting a number of projects in Madison and Milwaukee and some more urban areas, but some more suburban areas that are developing into some urban areas or urban type areas. I think we found that his products were his designs were the ones that kept popping up that we liked the most. So I think this is really a good example of some of the more successful projects that he's done in other locations, and we're excited to bring it to the market and see if we can get going.
Anything else? Go ahead, Kath.
Well, we've got more modern buildings now across the river with the
Anthem.
new, the student apartments, and then the other new building directly on the river. So this is not unusual. I love the balconies. I have a minor concern about only a 4-foot wide balcony because I'm a balcony person, and I want to be able to put my patio chair out there and get around it.
The good news is that not all of the balconies are shallow. Some of the balconies have a little bit more depth. It just, because the balconies, and this may be, if I can't capture this correctly, either Dale or Joe may be able to help this a little. Because the balconies they're not bolt-on balconies, which is kind of what Anthem was, I believe. I think Anthem has the
Cantilever.
Yeah, Anthem has the cantilever ones, but they're essentially designed into the structure. They are
okay.
You can kind of see, this is the corner structural support of this building. It kind of impacts how you lay those out and how you support those balconies, and there are some restrictions on how far you can come out, how wide you can go, things like that. So that's a little bit more sort of the reason for that, but it's the other, also the reason that we wanted to make them maybe they're a little shallower here and there, but we wanted to make them as functional as possible in other locations.
But you might be able to. No, that's fine. And the shallower ones are on the smaller units. And
Yeah, so
deeper ones are
I think
on
they're
the-
scaled. They're scaled appropriately. So if
Some don't even have them.
Yeah, there's a couple. Some of the ones in the middle don't have balconies, but they have larger windows. They have things like that. So I think, yeah, and we do have a couple of what I think is maybe one of the more interesting pieces of it is we have we have per building for the first building, we may shuffle the floor plan in the second building if we get a good response. We've got a couple of micro units that are 400 square feet. Yeah, so like something in that ballpark that are going to be really, that's a newish product. I know that right over here, that Eric did a couple next door, and those are products that have been flying. He has never had an issue leasing those out, and he's leasing them for great rent. So there's a really interesting part of the market that wants those tiny, efficient units. So I think that's a piece of sort of the interesting product that we've got here too. We've got all the way on the, the condo replacement that, I'm gonna try to make my parents move into, and then
Next to David.
Cut him a
Forsyth.
price break.
we do thorough checks on our. And then we have then we have something that's a little bit more of a a product maybe targeted at somebody who is working here 5 days a week and doesn't want to do a hotel. So maybe it's a more of a corporate unit efficiency type unit, or somebody who just wants a place to crash as they travel. I mean, it's something. It's a little bit of a different product that we're I think providing a range.
I'm sorry, I don't think I was here for the last approval. Are these market rate units?
Yes. Yeah. No, we have no intentions on doing tax credits or anything like that.
All right, any other
All our
questions?
money.
Any other comments, questions for the petitioners? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Go ahead, David, while we're waiting.
Ed, can I ask you one question? I was unclear. Are you going to do all three buildings simultaneously, or are those going to be stepped in?
They're going to
also?
be phased. Yeah, we're gonna phase them, sort of, foundation to one, top the other out, get some lease up going, and then foundation for the next one, and go from there. I think worst case is probably 3 years plus. Sorry. Worst case would probably be 3 years plus, maybe a hair. Best case would maybe be 18 to 24 months once we get started. Now, I'm not saying 18 months from now or anything like that, but once we get going on that first one, and we do still have site plan review, we have some other things that we need to get through here still, but that's, my gut tells me it's probably going to be 3-ish years to get to the full build out.
Thank you. All right. Anything else here today for this one, folks? All right, then back to the commission.
Motion to approve with conditions.
Second.
Discussion of the motion? Yeah.
I just want to reiterate what you said. I think this is going to be a marvelous development. Looking
Yeah.
forward to it.
I think the range of unit, it's very interesting.
Well, I guess the only question I had, I forgot to ask, is on that rendering, where's the river walk? I have walked at least twice now. Okay, right around the water edge. Yep. Okay, thank you.
All right, anything else? Let's call the roll then.
Cummings,
Aye.
Hintz,
Aye.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Weigert,
Aye.
Harry,
Aye.
Mott,
Aye.
Crop,
Aye?
Borsick,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 9-0.
Anybody move to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we're adjourned. Workshop for evaluation of design standard variance.